Good day to you all, and welcome. We shall be looking through the Grade 8 Lesson 3. So I hope that you're all well and truly prepared, and my best wishes for this very important topic that we're going to be dealing with, the importance of communication in the family. Start with the opening prayer then. May the wisdom of the all-compassionate one so shine within our hearts and minds this day, that we may be enlightened in our acts, thoughts and deeds. So shall we learn to be true, good and happy, and attain spiritual peace. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. The word Namo means homage, or I bow and I pay the highest respects to the Buddha. Having learnt this material as a Buddhist monk, I am also confident that the Buddha would highly approve of this material, as it's about being a good and moral person, which is the theme of our first unit. All right then. Appreciating the gift of family. Speak in such a way that people love to listen to you. So listen in such a way that people love to talk to you. And we're referring here to page 23 initially. So speak in a way that people love to listen to you. So if you're, people who nag, gossip, who bitch, who use harsh speech, who are crude or noisy, critical, it's not nice to listen to. And also listen in such a way people love to talk to you. Really understand them. So first of all, I'd like to recall the previous lesson by asking some of you students to share what you've learned in lesson 2. So if you can do that, please. It's a mini performance task, and the thing to answer, just jot down what you have picked up from that first lesson. And you can also look back at page 22 at the summary of that in order to help you do that. Yeah? All right then. We are going to try to do this. Pass the message game. Okay. Let's have a look, because also this was written not with a view to doing it online, and I'm not sure if I've adjusted it. Let's have a look. I'd like to ask the class to form groups composed of 10 students and write this message on a piece of paper. The family is an intimate community of life and love, striving for mutually beneficial solutions. And give the first player the message note. And have that person explain the message to the next person by whispering it into an audio recording. They cannot pass or show the message, and have them repeat the message very quickly in a whisper to the next person in the group. No one else must hear the audio. Request that the next person say whatever they heard, also in the same fast manner to the next person. So you can understand that we have to do this probably by messenger audio recording. All right, so the first person in the group has to send an audio recording whispering, "The family is an intimate community of life and love, striving for mutually beneficial solutions." They have to send that audio message to the next person, number 2 in the group. Number 2 in the group has to listen to it and then whisper on what they thought they heard to the third person. The family is, whatever they thought they heard. And then the third person has to send it to the fourth person to the fifth person, like that. Like, we call this Chinese whispers in a game. Got that? Okay. And continue around the group circle or down the line. the game goes on until the last person says whatever they heard aloud and the first person reveals the real message. All right, so that's our activity. So those will be groups of about 8 to 10. Okay, I'll probably make those groups. Then I'd like to process the activity by asking the following questions. How did you feel when you were doing the activity? How did you feel? What were your feelings? So don't answer, well, I thought that, or I wrote, what's your feeling? What were you feeling about it when you were doing the activity? Okay. I'd like a variety of answers, but consider, why do you think the last person did not get the right message? Why was that? They probably got something changed around, yeah? But let's ever experience that. And why does that happen? Please answer and submit. So your answers may vary, but I'd like to highlight the importance of listening, and comprehension, as well as the proper way to communicate. Right? Listening and comprehension, understanding what you heard, as well as the proper way to communicate. Skillful means in communication. Right speech and right mindful concentration. I'd like to link the activity to the lesson. For today's lesson, we will discover the importance of communication in the family. Now, dear students, I'd like to read. I just wanted to check that we'd done the first paragraph. I'd like you to read The Six Blind Men by an Arrow on pages 32 to 25, a poem adapted from Blind Men and the Elephant by John Godfrey Sachs. So first of all, the preamble, the section just before the real story. So here's also something for you to answer. Do you have a friend that you love to talk to? Were there instances that you empathetically, that's not spelled right. Oh no, wait a minute, it is spelled right. You emphatically, that's wrong actually, it's not supposed to be that. Can I just change that? Just give me a moment, because it's, emphatic is a different meaning altogether. Emphatic means you emphasize, that you, empathetically. Listen to you. That's right. They got a spelling mistake in the book there, so you should know that as well. Empathetic listening is when you really pay full attention that the other person has needs and has a problem that they need listening to. Okay, that's empathetic. Emphatic is another thing, is when you put a strong importance on what you're saying. Like if I say it was 3 miles to the school, 3 miles, the word 3 is emphatic, is emphasized. So were there instances that you empathetically listened to the concerns of your siblings? Please answer and submit. In these modern times, communication has become easy and fast. However, aside from the various forms of communication, we have also to consider our message, or what we are communicating, the mode or how we do it, and the decoded message, or how we processed the information that we have received. Let us read the story of Angelo and Maria and discover how important communication is within the family. Okay, victories of life then. The 6 blind men of Bayan Aral. One day, Angelo and Maria were arguing. Angelo was insisting that he had asked her younger sister, Maria, should be his younger sister Maria, to buy some glue and popsicle sticks at the market. That also should be. Maria, on the other hand, was claiming that Angelo never asked her to buy them. So they have differences of opinion. We were talking about a castle made of popsicle sticks. You never mentioned that you needed the materials for your project, Maria said. You are so forgetful, Maria. Now I do not have enough time to finish the castle. I will surely get a low grade in my art class, Angelo whined. And the brother and sister continued to argue until their grandfather came to the room. Hello, Angelo and Maria, Lolo Tassio greeted the children. What seems to be the problem? Angelo explained his side of the story while Maria quietly sobbed. Lolo Tassio intently listened to Angelo and softly stroked Maria's hair. He asked the children to sit with him on the bed. He looked at Angelo and Maria and took a deep breath and recited a poem. The illustration, what do you see there? Those are blind men all reaching out and touching a part of a carabao. So that's our background. It was 6 men of Bayan Aral, should be, to learning much inclined, who went to see the Tamarau, though all of them were blind, that each by observation might satisfy his mind. The first approached the Tamarau, and happening to fall against his broad and sturdy side, at once began to bawl, God bless me, but the Tamarau is very like a wall. The second, feeling the Tamarau's horn, that should be, cried, Ho, what have we here, so round and smooth and sharp? To me it is mighty clear, this wonder of a Tamarau is very like a spear. Excuse me. The third approached the animal, and happening to take the squirming tongue within his hands, thus boldly stood up and spake, I see, quoth he, the Tamarau is very like a snake. The fourth reached out an eager hand and felt about the knee. What must this wondrous beast is like is mighty plain, quoth he. 'Tis clear, the Tamarau is very like a tree. The fifth, who chanced to touch the ear, said, In the blindest man can tell what this resembles most. Deny the fact, who can, this marvel of a Tamarau is very like a fan. The sixth no sooner had begun about the beast to grope Then seizing on the swinging tail that fell within his scope, "I see," quoth he, "the tamaraw is very like a rope." And so these men of Bayan Aral disputed loud and long, each in his own opinion, exceeding stiff and strong, though each was partly in the right and all were in the wrong. After reciting the poem, Lolo Tasho stood up, smiled at the children, and said, "You know, unlike the 6 blind men of Bayan Aral who argue loud and long, you can both be humble, admit your shortcomings, and then move on." When Lolo Tasho left the room, Angelo held Maria's hand and said, "I am sorry." The poem was adapted from Blind Men and the Elephant by John Godfrey Sachs. Actually, it's a lot older than that. They're saying it's 1887, but that story is told in the Buddhist texts, which are 2,500 years old, so it just shows that stories get retold over and over. I'd like to ask you students the following questions. What is the story all about? What is the story all about, really? So something like the story is about Sibling or the 6 blind men who have some arguments because of their different perspectives. And what is the lesson of the story? Please answer and submit. What is the lesson? What can you learn from this when you really think about it and really apply it to your own life? We have to know the other side of the story before we jump to conclusions, and we have to communicate our hopes, our dreams, and love to our family. How can you relate the story in your own life? So it should have a green box to submit that one as well. How can you relate? In fact, I'll quickly do that now because it's important. If people are skimming through, they're looking for the green boxes to where there is a one. So I'm just going to copy paste one on. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Okay, there it goes. Next, how can you relate the story in your own life? Your answers may vary, however, I'd like to highlight the need for communication in the family. The need for communication in the family. All right. I'd like to ask you students to read the In Flame on page 25, and then please answer the reflection questions on page 25, and then I'd like to solicit some volunteers to share your answers too. Okay then. Just like Angelo and Maria, you may have had petty arguments with your siblings too. And without a doubt, miscommunication is a common source of conflict. Looking back at the poem, 6 Blind Men of Bayan Aral, is it not true that we can be partly right but also wrong at the same time? Thus, it is important that we suspend judgment, avoid hasty generalizations, and never make decisions based on impulse or emotions. If there is a problem, let us give the other person the opportunity to explain thoroughly, should be so that we can see the other's point of view and understand where he or she is coming from. Stephen Covey, the author of 7 Habits of Effective People, calls this seeking first to understand before being understood. Simply put, we must work hard to understand the other person first, because 2 people can see the same thing and have completely different ideas. So please now do the reflections on page 25. So the first one of the three is, have you ever experienced a time when you really wanted to say something positive to your loved ones but decided not to? Please share your experience. Was there a time when you really wanted to say something to your sibling or parents but failed to do it because of fear or embarrassment? How did you feel about that? And the third one, what could be the benefits of sincere and open communication among family members? Communication in the family. So we're now on to page 26. Truthful and effective communication within the family is critical in strengthening relationships and in attaining the goals of the family. However, there are instances wherein information is changed or withheld, which leads to the breakdown in communication. This causes other problems, such as doubt, anger, and ill will. On the other hand, if there is an effective communication in the family, then love, peace, and understanding will be present. Below are a few things that need to be considered with regard to communication in the family. The family is an intimate community of life and love. In the previous lesson, the family was defined as an intimate community of life and love. In order for the family to be an authentic community of persons, each member needs to communicate love, hope, and dreams to all the other members of the family without fear or hesitation. Every member of the family is called to practice sincerity, humility, and prudence when communicating with each other. Trust is important when one desires to be truly intimate with one's family. One also has to develop the virtue of listening. So, different points of view. Is it possible for 2 people to see the same thing and yet have different views or perspectives? Look at the figure. For some people, it is a white square with a black dot in the middle. Yet for some people will say that it is a black dot with a white space around it. Is it a white square with a black dot in, or a black dot with a white square around? Still others will see that the black dot is a hole and not a dot. There is only one image, but many differing viewpoints. The good thing is that all of the viewpoints have their own merit and may lay claim to the truth. So, how is this applied in the area of communication? Differences will always crop up in any relationship, primarily because of the different and unique perspectives of the individuals involved. But disagreements need not escalate into heated arguments. Each party should try to see the other's point of view. Each one must be humble and consider, what is he or she saying that I am not understanding? And how can I better state my case without putting him or her in a bad light? A striving for mutually beneficial solutions. Are you familiar with the lose-win scenario? More often than not, in conflicting situations, one side wins, the other side loses. But it doesn't have to be this way. Both sides can actually win a win-win scenario. However, it takes humility, prudence, and creativity so that everyone involved will come up with mutually beneficial solutions or agreement. When people value and respect each other, they strive to move away from the lose-win scenario and instead propose a better solution, or a win-win scenario where everyone gets a sense of victory. For example, a teenage girl wants to spend more time with her friends, but her friends do not like their daughter staying out late at night because they worry for her safety. A lose-win scenario would be that the teenage girl will disobey and just suffer the scolding of her parents afterwards. Or that the parents will forbid the teenage girl from leaving the house. One side wins while the other loses. However, if they sit down to talk, the parents and the teenage girl can agree on a curfew, which gives the daughter enough time to have fun with her friends and her parents to have some peace of mind. Seek first to understand and then to be understood. Dr. Stephen Covey proposed the habit of seeking first to understand, then to be understood in order for people to have true communication. Imagine two friends who have not seen each other for a while and are raring to update each other on each other's happenings. They are both very excited to tell their own story, that they end up not really listening to the story of the other. Sometimes when we communicate, we are more prone to sharing and at responding rather than listening. Excuse me. When we seek first to understand, we employ, it should be empathetic listening. It's done it again. not emphatic. I'm pretty sure. I'm going to double check that because it's twice and that's unusual for a spelling mistake. I'm going to check the meaning of emphatic meaning. Empathetic means one thing. Emphatic means showing or giving forcibly and clearly. That's not the same as listening with a lot of sympathy, which is empathetic. So anyway, I'm going to move on. When we seek first to understand, we employ empathetic listening and reflecting upon what the other is saying. It even calls for respectfully clarifying what we are hearing from the other person. This creates an atmosphere of caring, trust, sincerity, and openness, which leads to effective communication. Different levels of communication. Psychiatrists and social scientists Jürgen Rusch and Gregory Bateson in Communication, the Social Matrix of Psychiatry, 1951, assert that processes of receiving, evaluating, and transmitting information can be observed at the intrapersonal, interpersonal, group, and cultural levels of organization. What did all that mean? It means that when people are talking to each other, to themselves, or in groups, there are processes going on about receiving information, about evaluating information, and about transmitting information. Rausch and Bateson, 1951, explained that at the intrapersonal level, that's inside you, the focus of the observer is limited by the self, and the various functions of communication are found within the self. At the interpersonal level, the perceptual field is occupied by two people. At the group level, by many people, and at the cultural level, by many groups. All right. So now, concomitantly, that means together with, at the same time, in each of these fields, the importance of the single individual diminishes, and at the higher levels, one person becomes only a small element in the system of communication. That's not spelt right in the book. Concommit should have two M's as well. How can knowledge of the different levels of communication help us effectively communicate to our family and members of the society? How can that happen? Answer that and submit. Ruesch and Bateson explained this. In our reception of information, evaluation, and transmission of information, we must take into consideration our focus and the function of the information. For example, an information that is at the intrapersonal level would mean that we are concerned with ourselves and its function is limited to our being. An information that is at the intrapersonal level, that's like you're thinking about something, you're thinking about someone, you're thinking about an event, that's inside you, would mean that we are concerned with ourselves and its function is limited to our being. It's just about our inner responses. Whereas when we are operating at the interpersonal level, we have to consider how the information will be accepted, understood, and acted upon by the other person. It's altogether very different. Moving forward then, moving further to the group level, information is now received by a large number of people and as such acted upon by the crowd. At the cultural level, information and communication take on a much larger sphere and are now appreciated by various groups. So please complete the graphic organizer on page 28. So we're now on page 28. And then let's have a brainstorming session as a class on how we can have effective communication in the family and other people. Online, this will be created by me as a group chat. So I should make a note to do that as well. Okay. There it is already. It's already done. So there's the name of your group for that one. G8 less 3 brainstorming family communication, page 28. Okay. So after your brainstorming, that's this part here. So do the graphic organizer, and then let's have a brainstorming session as a class on this question: how we can have effective communication in the family and other people. So we're having a session all about that. Please try to keep it in English if you can do, although I don't mind. It's okay to do it in Bisaya. So that exercise then, different ways how we can have effective communication in the family inside those boxes, those circles there. You can fill in some ideas. Okay, so now we have a mini performance task. This is not included in the book, by the way. Right, so this is a different group. This is the G8 lesson 3 win-win skit group. So that's what you're going to be working within, and then you're going to, obviously there you're going to make a skit. Please create a short skit to demonstrate a win-win solution. You're going to make a video for the following. 1. A teenager asking for additional allowance from his or her parents. Right? A teenager asking for additional allowance from his or her parents. 2. A girl asking her parents for the latest smartphone. And 3. A skit about showing a sibling who does not want to do his or her house chores. Got that? Right. Actually, I just want to quickly go back and take a screenshot of this and this. Yeah, that one. And this one. That's it. Okay. Right then, let's move forward. So then please read page 28. And I'd like to present to the class the featured virtue, humility, by asking, why is it important for a person to be humble? Why is it important for a person to be humble? So answer and submit, please. Well, your answers may vary, but I'd like to emphasize that a humble person looks at every opportunity to learn and discover something new. Humility allows a person to become better and succeed. They're open, they're curious, and they look at opportunities to learn and to discover something new. Nah. All right, let's look at humility then. The author C.S. Lewis explained the virtues of humility as not thinking less of yourself, but thinking of yourself less. In this day and age, when most people encourage competition and individuality, it is a challenge to be humble and to think of one's self less. However, the virtue of humility is of paramount importance if one is to live a full life and desire to have a richer and meaningful relationship with the members of one's family and other people. A humble person knows that nobody can be best at everything. No matter how talented or skillful a person is, there is almost always somebody who can do something better. This understanding of one's limitation allows a person to look upon himself as a talented or skilled individual, but is humble enough to accept that there are other people who can do better. You have heard the saying, nobody is perfect. A humble person knows that human beings commit mistakes. Hence, when a person makes a mistake, the best response is to acknowledge it and correct it. A humble person knows that mistakes are learning opportunities. Have you seen in a group conversation dominated by one person who loves to talk about his or her achievements? Have you been in a group conversation dominated by one person who loves to talk about his or her achievements? Do you enjoy the company of a braggart, somebody who proudly boasts? Please answer and submit. Humble people do not brag, but it does not mean that they are not proud of their achievements. It simply means that they choose not to be self-centered and do not find the need to impress people. Genuinely humble persons value and celebrate their personal success as much as they enjoy hearing other people's success stories too. Now students, please read page 29 and answer points to ponder. And after, I'd like some volunteers to share their answers. Do you know that the word, trivia, communication. Do you know that the word communication comes from the Latin word communicare, which means to share or to make common? Let us all strive to share truthful and empowering information. Uplifting realizations. Page 29. Effective communication with our family, loved ones, friends, and other people entails a lot of work. However, if we desire to nurture intimate relationships, we have to exert effort in how we communicate. At the moment, technology has allowed us to be reached easily, but how we communicate and what we communicate is still our responsibility. Here are some important reminders for young people. 1. You must consistently practice openness and humility and consider the different viewpoints of people. 2. You have to look beyond the lose-win scenario and instead endeavor to come up with mutually beneficial solutions. 3. Listening takes a lot of effort, and so you must always listen intently and seek to understand what the other person is saying. This is also considered as active listening. So now students, please do the points to ponder on page 29, that should be. Yeah, that's a mistake now. I'm going to just correct that so that people don't go running off to the wrong page. Excuse me. 9. There we go. And I'd like to solicit some volunteers to share their answers. Points to ponder. How can you encourage your siblings and friends to be open, humble, and considerate of the opinions of others? Put your answer on there. That should have a green. It should have a green box. Sorry, I'm going to make another little correction again. So the same sort of thing as before. This one, copy, and this one, skadoosh. Oh, there's a few of them that don't have it on. They should have. There's another one. And some more as well. And we're good. So that one should have one as well. There it is. All right. So, how can you encourage your siblings to be open, humble, and considerate of the opinions of others? 2. How can you prevent the occurrence of a lose-win scenario, especially in communicating your concerns to other people? Points to ponder. 3, can you cite some examples wherein you can practice active listening? Can you cite some examples wherein you can practice active listening? Next, the summative test. So we're now on page 30. Indeed. Summative tests. So just reviewing back what we've been covering. Identify the person or the concept that is being described by the following items. Write your answers on the space before the number. 1. This refers to the virtue of celebrating one's personal success, choosing not to be self-centered and not finding the need to impress people. 2. This refers to the author who described effective communication as seeking first to understand, then to be understood. And 3. This refers to the Latin word communicare, which means to share or to make common. Moving on. Number 4 of the summative test. This refers to a situation wherein one person's gain is another person's loss. And 5, this refers to what persons must work on in order to achieve a win-win situation. And 6, this refers to listening intently and seeking to understand what the other person is saying. Seven, this refers to the standard or quality that we must adhere to if we desire to be truly intimate with our family. And it is the opposite of falsehood. Sorry, shut up. Sorry, a bit of distraction on the side. 8, this refers to a way of listening which creates an atmosphere of caring, trust, sincerity, and openness, which leads to effective communication. 9, this refers to a statement used intentionally for the purpose of deception, which causes doubt, anger, and ill will. Statement. 10, this refers to what happens when we fail to communicate adequately. Next, we're on to page 31 now. Please do the case study, the situational analysis on page 31. Some volunteers, please share your answers. So situation 1, your older brother never admits his mistakes. He feels that admitting one's mistakes is a sign of weakness, and that his siblings will lose their respect for him if he will acknowledge his shortcomings. How will you help your brother rediscover the virtue of humility? So there's possible solution 1, 2, and the best solution. And then this question: if you committed a mistake, how can your shortcoming... What's the question? How can you admit to your shortcoming without embarrassing yourself? Let's just correct that. How can you admit to your shortcoming without embarrassing yourself. There it is. And I'd like to ask some volunteers to share their answers. Answers may vary, but I'd like to highlight the following. Case 1, well, everyone is called to be humble, regardless of age or social status. In situation 2, one of your friends in class confides to you her problem with her family. She explains that at home they rarely talk about problems and that the final decision simply comes from their father. She feels that she can help her family solve some of their problems if only they can communicate effectively. Well, how can you help your classmate? Solution 1, solution 2, best solution. If you are going to say something to correct a loved one, how would you go about it? If you're going to say something to correct a loved one, how would you go about it? I'd like to ask some volunteers to share their answers, and answers may vary, but I'd like to highlight the following. Case 2, communication is important in the family, and that everyone is encouraged to express his or her feelings to their loved ones. Page 32. So the scaffolding for the performance task. So this is an individual task. Create a concept map about the different levels of communication according to Ruish and Bateson. Give specific situations wherein the different levels are demonstrated. Okay? Create a concept map. Different levels of communication that we covered back in that one of the articles a couple of pages back. Concept map should look something like this, but you can do it more creatively if you wish. And the rubric criteria look like this. High quality, 3 points. Very appealing and skillfully, three points. Highly cohesive concepts highlighting one another. That creates the unity, and the purpose should achieve the aim and the purpose, which is should be about different levels of communication and specific situations where the different levels are demonstrated. Remember that part too. All right, low functioning would be it has a low quality, it's less appealing and unskillfully done, the ideas are not related to one another, and it really doesn't achieve the objective. So summary. If we desire to be truly intimate with our family members, we must trust them and also intently listen to their concerns. Secondly, all opinions have their own merit. Thirdly, when people value and respect one another, they strive to move away from the lose-win scenario and instead propose a better solution or a win-win scenario where everyone gets a sense of victory. And fourthly, when we seek to first understand, we employ empathetic listening to reflect upon what the other is saying. Spelling mistake again there. So there we have it. We have the quotation at the end. We have 2 ears. No, I'm going to correct that one now. Not 2 cars. They didn't have cars in Epictetus's day. Okay, easy mistake to make. Any more? No, that's fine. We have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. Epictetus. All right. The closing prayer, dear students. Reverently do we pray to Thee, the Holy and Perfect One. We earnestly resolve to understand Thy teaching and to daily tread Thy path. So shall, like Thee, we may attain the peace of Nirvana. Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya, Namo Buddhaya. Blessings from me. Keep it up. You're doing well.